I'm going to learn French now so that I can use that excuse. Anytime I say something that I don't really want to be questioned on, I'm just going to say, I'm francophone. I can't speak that in English. I can't say that in English. You have to ask me in French to define the word. Je francophone. Welcome everyone to Ratioed. My name is Harrison Faulkner. The Emergencies Act hearings are underway, and so far all we have heard from witness testimony has been an endless stream of useless nonsense, of woke speak drivel. Clearly what's going on is there is an attempt to try and muddy the waters about what really went on in Ottawa in February of this year. Also on the show, Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland want you to know that for all your hard work, for all your tax dollars that you've given to Justin Trudeau's government to spend endlessly, well, they're going to give you back some pennies, some crumbs for all of your tax dollars. How kind. Oh, and the video that they released this week about that announcement was so bizarre, so strange. Why are those two just so weird? That's the question that I want to know from you guys. And the Ratio of the Week award goes to a late entry into the competition this week. This tweet that we're going to show you is definitely worthy of the award. And it involves True North, so you'll see exactly why. And please, before we go any further, help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're so close to hitting 100,000 subscribers. We're almost there. Our goal is to try and get to 100,000 by the end of October. So if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and also hit the notification button to be notified when we put out new videos. Drop a like on the video, share it around, and the comment question for this episode is this: are you confident that the commissioner overseeing these hearings is going to find that Justin Trudeau's government was not justified in invoking the emergency measures? We know from what we've heard so far that that justification has not been made available. We have not seen anything that justifies these measures yet, but there's still a long way to go. Do you think the commissioner will possibly find that Justin Trudeau was not justified, or is it pretty much a foregone conclusion? Like I said before, drop a like on the video and share it. And if you're feeling generous, please consider donating to us at donate.tnc.news. The link is in the description of this video. All right, let's get into it. The Emergencies Act hearings have been a complete clown show from the beginning, guys. I'm afraid I was optimistic going into this. I thought, we're going to maybe, hopefully, get some answers as to what really went on. We're going to finally get to the bottom of why Justin Trudeau felt as though the bouncy castle rebellion, the hot tub insurrection, required wartime-like measures to I guess, move out of Ottawa. The Emergencies Act hearing is required by law after the government invokes these emergency measures. These are the last resort measures, and the threshold that the government is supposed to meet in order to invoke such heavy-handed measures is very high. And it's worth just going through that, because then when we go through some of these clips of the hearings, you'll realize this is a clown show. What we're watching here is basically a performance. It's designed to convince Canadians who are watching that these protesters were these awful, evil people. They were there for an insurrection, or as they always say, an occupation of Ottawa. So we're going to go through the specific language in the Act, which basically lays out how and when the government is justified in invoking these wartime measures. We know from what we've heard from testimony, phantom honking, microaggressions, a purge-like atmosphere without witnessing any actual acts of violence. So no violence, but phantom honking and microaggressions. Awful, awful stuff. Let's just go through this here and you tell me. I might miss it, but you tell me if you caught in this reading anywhere where it says phantom honking is required for the government to invoke the Emergencies Act. So this is what the Act actually states. The Emergencies Act can be invoked if, as the text in the Act states, what's going on seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians and is of such proportions or nature as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with it, or seriously threatens the ability of the Government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada, and that cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law of Canada. So basically what needs to happen is the hot tub rebellion needs to become so dangerous for the government of Ottawa that no other law in the country is able to successfully put down the hot tub rebellion, the bouncy castle insurrection. That's what needs to be met by the government. And the purpose of the inquiry, which again is required by law, is to find out if what was just read met what was actually going on in Ottawa. If the bouncy castle rebellion seriously threatened the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Canada. Again, remember this. Before the Emergencies Act was invoked, the border blockade in Windsor was cleared. So clearly, existing laws managed to clear the border blockade, but of course, the Bouncy Castle Rebellion, well, no. That required the Emergencies Act, that required the RCMP horses, that required the brutal beatdown of protesters in the city. Because of course it did, right? So let's go through what witnesses in Ottawa have testified. So the first clip of viral testimony came from Victoria Delaronde, an Ottawa resident, a blind Ottawa resident. She testified that she suffers to this day from phantom honking, imaginary sounds of horns that haunt her while she's going about her day in the streets. Now, when the CBC first released that article about phantom honking, basically everyone in this country laughed at that and mocked that article for it being so totally ridiculous. For this idea, they created a new term, phantom honking. They created this new term to try and, paint the truckers, paint the protesters as so evil that they have created phantom honking in the streets, that Ottawa residents, they can hear in the distant that loud horn of the trucks. They're coming their way once again, guys. But things have gone to a point now where we're just taking that testimony at face value. We're just saying, actually, oh yeah, you hear phantom honking, you hear horns in your mind. They're not actually there, but you hear them in your mind. Okay, that's totally normal, first of all. And second of all, okay, that must justify the Emergencies Act. That must justify the RCMP horses coming in to trample on the protesters. So take a look at this video. This is from Victoria Delaronde testifying of hearing imaginary horns in her mind.
I had also a phantom horn blowing as an experience for a number of weeks after.
In the immediate days and weeks after the end of the demonstrations, what was your experiences with horns?
Very much like that I kept hearing them like phantom horns. I kept hearing them in my head. I also had phantom smells too.
By phantom smells or horns, they're not there, but that's...
They're not there.
We played that exact same clip around the office to some other True North employees, and they actually said that they heard horns in that video. Now, I can tell you, and the video editor can testify, there were no horns played in that video. So if you did hear phantom honking, if you did hear horns in that video, well, you too, like Victoria, suffer from phantom honking. You should probably get that checked out by your doctor. The next viral clip of testimony came from Zexi Lee. Zexi Lee is a federal bureaucrat. She's a 22-year-old bureaucrat, and she was also the public face of the injunction that was filed, a successful injunction that was filed in Ottawa at the start of the protest to get truckers to stop honking their horns. So she's kind of been the public face of the resistance movement in Ottawa to the truckers. Well, she testified, among other things, that in Ottawa, it was like some lawless wasteland, like some lawless nightmare. She testified that it was a Purge-like atmosphere. For those of you that don't know, The Purge is a fictional movie. It's a horror movie in which a United States enters a 12-hour state of complete lawlessness where people go on murdering rampages and killing sprees. So she testified that the Ottawa protest, the trucker convoy, was like a Purge-like atmosphere, as she says. And she also says that the streets were covered, the snow around the streets were covered in urine and defecation. Now again, that's just not true, because if it were true, we would definitely hear about that. We would know about that and we'd see pictures of it, but of course we didn't. So she just made that up clearly. And then of course she goes on top of that and says, oh yeah, the streets were like a Purge-like atmosphere. Listen to this clip.
The snow was often colored yellow or brown due to the public urination and defecation that took place gratuitously, often along the side of my building and just quite literally anywhere you walked, on every corner. And on these intersections, oftentimes there were illegal bonfires and just trash burning right next to, cans of fuel, or near the same areas where these individuals would later set off fireworks. And I just remember feeling like it was such a surreal sight. It almost felt like you were in something like the Purge, because though I didn't often see direct acts of violence, there was a certain chaos on the streets.
So you hear there, it was like the Purge, where people go on killing sprees in the United States, but actually I didn't witness any personal acts of violence. Interesting there. So it was like a Purge, except without all the crime. Does that make sense, guys? Does that make sense to you? Clearly, again, justification for Trudeau to invoke the Emergencies Act. But guys, the cream of the crop in terms of woke nonsense spoken at these hearings has to come from Ottawa City Councillor Matthew Fleury, this woke, francophone, bilingual city councillor Matthew Fleury. I mention his linguistic capabilities because you'll see in the clip it comes up. Now, he accused the protesters in Ottawa of committing multiple acts of microaggressions. Microaggressions. Now, that's a word that most people will never use. That's because that word is basically only spoken by woke activists, equity officers pushing critical race theory as a profession. Now, I Googled the definition of microaggression because I was also confused. I don't use that word. I'm not a woke freak. So I don't use the word microaggressions. But on Google, microaggressions is defined as a term used for commonplace daily verbal, behavioral, or environmental slights, whether intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative attitudes towards stigmatized or culturally marginalized groups. Now, with that out of the way, Matthew Fleury accused the truckers in Ottawa of committing multiple acts of microaggressions. Brendan Miller, the lawyer representing the protesters in Ottawa, asked Matthew Fleury to define the word, given he had used it so many times in his testimony. If you're going to use the word, you might as well be able to define the word. So watch what happens. Watch what happens, if you haven't seen this already, watch what happens when Brendan Miller asks woke city councillor Matthew Fleury to define microaggressions.
In your evidence, you made use of a term you referred to as microaggression. Is that right?
I believe so, multiple times.
Okay. Is microaggression, is your understanding of that it means verbal and environmental slights?
Je suis francophone, donc si vous voulez être spécifique sur les mots, va falloir...
I'm francophone, so if you want to ask me specific things about words, you're going to have to ask me in French. You're asking me a theory about how to define something. Unfortunately, my knowledge of English terminology is perhaps not sufficiently appropriate, Commissioner.
Je m'appelle Brendan.
My name is Brendan.
I think, it is funny, but it's not. I am doing my very best to answer clear questions in English. You asked me a very specific question on a definition. I'm saying, ask me, clarify in French, and I'm glad to specify if it is yes or no. The specificity of the nuance of a word, I'm uncomfortable in responding to your question.
What of the words that I put to you, and there's a few, so means, verbal, and environmental, and slights is confusing? Is there, which one are you confused about?
J'ai expliqué plusieurs fois.
I've already explained. Try to express this, and I've explained this to the Commissioner, that, to my mind, everything in the periphery of the red zone was what I would describe as being microaggressions.
Have you ever seen something so utterly ridiculous? So insanely ridiculous. To use the word microaggressions multiple times, delivered as if you're a native English speaker without any problems, and then the second you're asked by someone who is questioning you on that term to define that exact word, you crumble. You pretend to not speak English. Imagine just using that excuse. I'm going to learn French now so that I can use that excuse. Anytime I say something that I don't really want to be questioned on, I'm just going to say, I'm francophone. I can't speak that in English. I can't say that in English. You have to ask me in French to define the word. Je francophone. They're trying to make it seem as though the Bouncy Castle Rebellion, the hot tub insurrection, was so dangerous that the last resort measures were definitely required. So there's this new thing that Justin Trudeau has been doing over the past year, and it's very strange and weird and just uncomfortable. I just gotta say it, it's very uncomfortable. He does these weird selfie videos where he's like standing in front of his phone with, and the phone's a bit angled, right? It's supposed to look like it's sort of like totally him doing it, like it's totally organic. And he's like speaking into the phone, talking about legislation that he's passed. And there was a video posted this week, him and Chrystia Freeland standing very close together in his office, doing one of these weird tilted angled selfie videos. Very strange video. It's getting absolutely mocked on Twitter. And there's a lot to get into because, again, like I said, it's just uncomfortable. Basically, what Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland are talking about here is they're talking into Justin Trudeau's phone, and they're saying how proud they are of legislation passed to give you back basically $300 or $400 from taxes to help you get through what is basically record inflation, record high food prices. So it's called this GST tax rebate. Now, without getting into too much detail, what's going on here is Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, acting as Prince and Princess of Canada, are basically standing on top of their castle, throwing pennies out to the peasants on the ground, giving back fractions of their money, which was given to the government to waste and to spend endlessly on stupid things. They're celebrating giving back our money to us. Like it's some big accomplishment. Oh, how charitable. How generous of you, Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. How amazing of you guys. Very weird stuff going on in this video. You've got Chrystia Freeland in the first 30 seconds of the video endlessly banging her head like she's at the mosh pit of a Metallica concert. And then you've got Justin Trudeau saying the legislation has passed royal assent. Now, you don't need to be a political science expert to know that that's not actually how it works. You don't pass royal assent. Royal assent is given. And then, of course, also at the very beginning of the video, the weird way Justin Trudeau says Chrystia. He says it like he's some worldwide traveled expert. Like he's got a little bit of an accent there. Chrystia, Freeland and I. Like it's very weird. Why is he? It's just so strange, guys, right? I'm not the only person who thinks it's strange. Turns out I'm not, because the comments are great. He's getting brutally mocked for it. So one person writes, how will that offset my July $12,000 grocery bill? Oh wait, that was yours. That's right. You see, Justin Trudeau's grocery bill, in an exclusive report uncovered by True North, turns out that he spent $12,000 on groceries in a month. $12,000, because that's exactly what all of us spend, right, on groceries? This person writes, and this is perfect, nice spin, but I'd rather just keep my own money in the first place. Yes, exactly. Instead of celebrating about giving pennies of our money back to us, why don't you just not take it from us in the first place? How easy would that be? We'd save you the cringe. We'd save you the cringe, man, of these weird videos. You don't even have to do the videos. Just don't take the money in the first place. That's how it works, right? Justin Trudeau has to have our money to waste in the first place, and then he can give back pennies to us, and then he can make a big deal of it. Make it a little political win. This person sums exactly what I just said up perfectly. He's giving you back pennies for all your taxes that you give to him so he can waste. Here we go, ratio of the week time, guys. And I have to, before we go any further, I have to give credit to a Twitter user who sent me this tweet from CTV News that was getting absolutely destroyed, ruthlessly ratioed. And the tweet says, video games can potentially trigger cardiac arrest in susceptible children, study finds. Now, when I took that screenshot, this tweet had over 2,500 replies and under 430 likes. It had 423 likes and over 2,500 replies. So a complete destruction of CTV News on Twitter. Now, that usually would have been the winner. However, you'll see exactly why it does not win the award this week, because the true winner of the award goes to Tasha Kiridan, the former chair of John Charest's failed conservative leadership bid. Tasha Kiridan shared a Reuters fact check, which fact-checked the video of the Pfizer executive claiming that the vaccine was never tested for transmission prior to it entering the European market. We posted that video at True North. The video posted by True North got over 2 million views, and the original video posted by Dutch parliamentarian MEP Rob Roos has over 13 million views on Twitter. So, of course, along comes Reuters to fact-check the article. However, Reuters' fact-check is not really what you might think it is. It's not taking issue with the video True North posted. It's not taking issue with anything we wrote about it either. It's purely taking issue with the idea that testing the vaccine for stopping transmission was required prior to entering the market, prior to leaders telling us that the vaccine stopped transmission, prior to, of course, the federal government and provinces in this country enacting discriminatory vaccine mandates on Canadians. This video went instantly viral, and True North posted it. And Reuters fact-checks True North's video without actually proving where we were wrong in the video itself. So there you go. Interesting there. Reuters fact-checking an article without actually proving anything was false. I tend to find that I see that a lot these days coming from Reuters. Now, Tasha Kiridan took this tweet and wrote, "It's been a fun 24 hours on Twitter," leaving it here and inviting @Leslyn-Lewis and @Daniel Smith and any other Canadian politicos still trading in misinformation to read the below. Where does True North come in with all this? So the actual fact check by Reuters includes our video at True North. So they're basically saying that we were wrong for posting the video. We were not wrong. Reuters couldn't find anything we had posted that was actually misinformation. Nonetheless, Tasha accuses basically true north of pushing misinformation, and by extension, Leslyn Lewis and Danielle Smith. This tweet got 678 replies, 365 likes when I first screenshotted it. So it was getting pretty solidly ratioed. Now, True North's founder and editor-in-chief, Candice Malcolm, quote tweeted this tweet and absolutely shot it down brilliantly. She wrote this: True North posts a video of a Pfizer exec quoting her verbatim and in context. Reuters fact-checks our journalism using their opinions as facts to try and revive a dead narrative. Tasha uses the fake fact-check to dunk on legit criticism, gets ratioed. Cosmic justice, my friends. Couldn't have put it any better myself. She's basically using what is obviously a fake fact-check to try and dunk on conservatives raising legitimate questions. Why wouldn't we have questions about this, given that this was a justification used by Justin Trudeau to enact some insanely discriminatory vaccine policies? Keep in mind, unvaccinated Canadians weren't allowed to see their dying parents in long-term care centers. They weren't allowed to get on an airplane or a train or a boat, God forbid they got on a boat, to travel interprovincially. It's insanity. We talked about it last week, that this deserves to be called out, and really, we can't be having this anymore in Canada. But then again, here comes Tasha Kiridan, Ottawa establishment figures, trying to basically say that anyone who raises questions about this is pushing misinformation. Here we go. We've got this one here. Preventing transmission never required, but touted as why everyone should submit. This is the real issue here. Another Twitter user writes, "That's wonderful. Did you know that the Reuters CEO is on Pfizer's board of directors? Interesting piece of information there. Not worth investigating, right? We wouldn't want to investigate that potential conflict of interest, right? Of course not. Nothing to see there. Nothing to see there with the fact checkers and Pfizer. But of course, don't look into that. That would be a bad waste of your time. You wouldn't want to uncover a potential conflict of interest." And lastly, here we go. Fact check from the mainstream media. Debate settled. Exactly. Now that Reuters fact checked it, of course there's no debate to be had. There's no questioning the almighty Reuters. The almighty Reuters must be taken as gospel. No questioning can be given to Reuters fact checks. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Help us out by subscribing to our YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. I'll catch you tomorrow on Fake News Friday. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.